Namaskar, Jai Shri Krishna. Enlightening text 35, text 36 and text 37 of chapter 7, the son of Drona punished of first canto creation of Srimad Bhagavatam. Text 35. Mainam partharhasi tratum brahma bandhu mi mama jahi yo asavanagasah suptan vadhin nishi balakan. Lord Shri Krishna said, O Arjun, you should not show mercy by releasing this relative of a Brahman, Brahma Bandhu, for he has killed innocent boys in their sleep. The word Brahma Bandhu is significant. A person who happens to take birth in the family of a Brahman but is not qualified to be called a Brahman is addressed as the relative of a Brahman and not as a Brahman. The son of a High Court judge is not virtually a High Court judge, but there is no harm in addressing a High Court judge's son as a relative of the Honorable Justice. Therefore, as by birth only, one does not become a High Court judge, so also one does not become a Brahman simply by birthright, but by acquiring the necessary qualifications of a Brahman. As the High Court judgeship is a post for the qualified man, so also the post of a Brahman is attainable by qualification only. The Shastras enjoins that even if good qualifications are seen in a person born in a family other than that of a Brahman, the qualified man has to be accepted as a Brahman, and similarly, if a person born in the family of a Brahman is void of Brahmanical qualification, then he must be treated as a non-Brahman, or in better terms, a relative of a Brahman. Lord Shri Krishna, the supreme authority of all religious principles, the Vedas, has personally pointed out these differences, and he is about to explain the reason for this in the following shlokas. Text 36. Matam pramatta munamattam suptam balam striyam jadam prapannam virtham bhitam na ripum hanti dharmavita. A person who knows the principles of religion does not kill an enemy who is careless, intoxicated, insane, asleep, afraid, or devoid of his chariot. Nor does he kill a boy, a woman, a foolish creature, or a surrendered soul. An enemy who does not resist is never killed by a warrior who knows the principles of religion. Formerly, battles were fought on the principles of religion and not for the sake of sense gratification. If the enemy happened to be intoxicated, asleep, etc., as above mentioned, he was never to be killed. These are some of the codes of religious war. Formerly, war was never declared by the whims of selfish political leaders. It was carried out on religious principles, free from all vices. Violence carried out on religious principles is far superior to so-called non-violence. Text 37. Swa pranan yah parapranaiha prapushnaatya grunaha khalah tadavadhastasya hi shreyo yada dosha dyatya dhaha puman. A cruel and wretched person who maintains his existence at the cost of others' lives deserves to be killed for his own well-being, otherwise he will go down by his own actions. A life for a life is just punishment for a person who cruelly and shamelessly lives at the cost of another's life. Political morality is to punish a person by a death sentence in order to save a cruel person from going to hell. That a murderer is condemned to a death sentence by the state is good for the culprit, because in his next life he will not have to suffer for his act of murder. Such a death sentence for the murderer is the lowest possible punishment offered to him, and it is said in the Smriti Shastras that men who are punished by the king on the principle of a life for a life are purified of all their sins, so much so that they may be eligible for being promoted to the planets of heaven. According to Manu, the great author of civic codes and religious principles, even the killer of an animal is to be considered a murderer, because animal food is never meant for the civilized man, whose prime duty is to prepare himself for going back to Godhead. He says that in the act of killing an animal, there is a regular conspiracy by the party of sinners, and all of them are liable to be punished as murderers, exactly like a party of conspirators who kill a human being combinedly. He who gives permission, he who kills the animal, he who sells the slaughtered animal, he who cooks the animal, he who administers distribution of the foodstuff, and at last he who eats such cooked animal food, and are all murderers, and all of them are liable to be punished by the laws of nature. No one can create a living being despite all advancement of material science, and therefore No one has the right to kill a living being by one's independent whims. For the animal eaters, the scriptures have sanctioned restricted animal sacrifices only, and such sanctions are there just to restrict the opening of slaughterhouses and not to encourage animal killing. The procedure under which animal sacrifice is allowed in the scriptures is good both for the animal sacrificed and the animal eaters. It is good in the sense that the animal sacrificed is at once promoted to the human form of life after being sacrificed at the altar, and the animal eater is saved from grosser types of sins, eating meats supplied by organized slaughterhouses, which are ghastly places for breeding all kinds of material afflictions to society, country, and the people in general. The material world is itself a place always full of anxieties, and by encouraging animal slaughter, the whole atmosphere becomes polluted more and more by war, pestilence, famine, and many other unwanted calamities. Hare Krishna.